Sergio Perez won last weekend's Monaco Grand Prix. As sad as I was for Charles with Ferrari going full strategy on him, I was chuffed for Checo. But now, this weekend, we're at Baku, and this is as good a chance as ever that Sergio's going to get of winning 2 on the bounce. I'm not joking, he's got an exceptional relationship with this lanky strip of tarmac on oil. You could go as far to say he's a bit of a specialist in Baku. Now, I am making this video before the 2022 Azerbaijan Grand Prix, so there is big risk of jinx, big risk of aged well, but I'm prepared to take that chance. I'm feeling lucky because Sergio Perez loves a bit of the Azerbaijan Grand Prix. Let's talk about it. This Grand Prix in Baku in Azerbaijan hasn't got much of a history. You only have to go back 6 years for its inaugural running in 2016. Although the first running of the GP around the Baku street circuit was actually called the European Grand Prix. It was then 2017. Onwards, it changed to Azerbaijan. Why? Politics, essentially. Azerbaijan is an ex-Soviet state, but the promoters wanted to showcase and highlight Azerbaijan as a European first country. The country does have a northern land border with Russia, but their attempt was to kind of separate themselves from this kind of affiliation and come across as a modern European country. And on top of that, kind of like Saudi Arabia, the nation does have its skeletons in terms of kind of human rights record stuff, and I'm sure labelling it European Grand Prix probably helped FOM sleep a bit easier at night. Green light in a race there, I guess. But honestly, who really knows? Because at the end of the day, they only kept it the European Grand Prix for 1 year, so it wasn't like it was obviously that important in the end, was it? But what this short history means is that in 6 years, we've only had 5 Grand Prix at this venue. Obviously no race in 2020 because of the Rona. But even then, with so little running, I think Baku has become a bit of a fan favourite. Got that stupidly long 2.2 kilometre straight, the longest in all of F1. It's a street circuit, but you can go 3 wide down the main straight. Like, yes, it's a street circuit, but it has very few characteristics that we typically associate with them in a good way. And again, it's somewhere where Sergio always seems to be able to deliver the goods. His average finishing position in the 4 of 5 Azerbaijan Grand Prix that he's finished has been P3.25. And 3 of those 4 races, he was in a Force India Racing Point. So not exactly a title winning car, really, is it? So I thought we'd go back through race by race because Sergio Perez is one of those drivers who's competed in every Azerbaijan Grand Prix. Look at his history there and see if we can foreshadow another dub this weekend. In 2016, he qualified P2 in that beautiful black and silver Force India. Massively underrated livery as far as I'm concerned. Unfortunately, he had to take a 5-place grid drop down to P7 with a gearbox change. He punted it in practice, so fair enough, that was on him. Fortunately, he was able to make 2 places up off the start, gave that typical silky Sergio support to his tyres to make a 2-stop work, kept Lewis at bay and passed Kimi Raikkonen in his Ferrari on the final lap to convert a majestic P3 finish. That was his second podium in quick succession, to having got a P3 at Monaco 2 races prior. Fantastic season for Checo 2016, helped Force India get 4th in the Constructors, one of his greatest seasons in Formula 1, no question. 2017, he qualified P6, fractionally ahead of new teammate Esteban Ocon. Sergio also shunted in practice for the 2nd season in a row, but this time he shunted at the Castle section in the exact same place where Charles Leclerc would go on to I Am Stupid It 1 year later. No gearbox change though, so never punished. Well, not in qualifying anyway. The race was... he was punished. Unfortunately, much of his 2017 season will be remembered for his numerous shunts with teammate Esteban Ocon. And Baku was the first real high-profile one, right? Because they'd flirted with danger the race before in Canada, got very close, but it didn't really come too much to blows. But this weekend was where it kicked off. For me, this one was definitely on Esteban. You can watch the replay yourself. I'll put some freeze frames on screen. Side by side into turn 3, Sergio on the outside. I think Esteban thought he was a bit too aggressive going into the corner, but then Esteban just decided to just give him no room and just keep moving right. Squeezed him out, damage to both, but mainly to Checo. Front wing was gone, race was over. Extra difficult for Sergio to stomach because Esteban would convert a P6 in that race, which just goes to show where the potential finishing place could have been if it wasn't for that foolishness off the start. Honestly, them two were so dumb. I would have been livid if I'd worked for that team in that year, because these two just couldn't help themselves. Because yes, this one was firmly for me on Esteban, but Checo didn't exactly cover himself in glory later on in the season between the two of them either. A real shame, but sometimes teammates let their egos get the better of them and they put that above the rest of the team, which does my head in, to be honest, when I see that. 2018, he qualified P8, fractionally behind Esteban Ocon this time. It had been very close in quali 2 years in a row between the two of them. So the weekend didn't start anything special, really, but fortunately for Checo, it would end pretty special, which is when it matters. Although he didn't make it easy for himself, so he broke his front wing on the first lap, hit the back of Kimi Raikkonen and picked up a 5-second penalty as well, did Checo. Although ironically, Raikkonen would then go on to punt Ocon into the wall later in the race, which I'm sure Checo had a little laugh to himself about. There were 6 retirements in this race, 3 safety cars, yet Sergio was there to capitalise. Down at P15 at one point, but steadily made progress through the field, obviously benefited massively from the Verstappen-Ricciardo shunt, Grosjean being hit by Ericsson, allegedly, and Valtteri Bottas picking up a heartbreaking punch-out right at the end of the race from the lead. Yet Perez made sure he was up there to make the most of it, capitalise, second P3 at the Azerbaijan Grand Prix in 3 years. Well done, Sergio. 2015 qualified strong in P5, comfortably ahead of teammate Lance Stroll, who couldn't even get out of Q1. Would convert the race to a P6 in the end, which was fair enough because Charles Leclerc had a dodgy qualifying, started P9. He was inevitably going to make his way through the field in that 2019 Ferrari with the, sus engine, remember? Down that straight at Baku, he was always going to come through the field, wasn't he? Sergio did jump Max at the start, mind you, so he was running P4 towards the start. He couldn't have done much more given the equipment he had. Best of the rest was a fantastic result. Other than that, not much really happened in the race apart from Ricciardo reversing into Daniel Kvyat, which was kind of funny. But that's about it for Checo. Next. So after a year out, 2021, we returned to the Baku street circuit, to the Azerbaijan Grand Prix. Sergio, difficult qualifying. His first year in the Red Bull put it P7. Although he was only about 3.5 tenths off of Max in P3, who only just out-qualified Pierre Gasly. So actually neither Red Bull had a particularly good showing in qualifying. Although in hindsight, given how the race went, you got to think maybe they just set the car up for the race and didn't worry too much about qualifying because you can overtake at Baku. Fortunately for Checo, this was a race of attrition, but he also had a fantastic start. He jumped Carlos Sainz into turn 1 and then went round the outside of Pierre Gasly into turn 3. It was super important to get those moves done early doors so that he didn't lose touch with the leading cars. Charles qualified P1, remember, in that Ferrari, but he was falling down. Max went past Charles and Sergio followed past pretty soon after. And Checo kept that gap relative to his teammate close enough that he could benefit from slipstream and kind of hang on the back of him. Which I think this was the first race of Checo in a Red Bull where we really saw him keep fairly close to Verstappen. Strategy-wise, Checo went longer than Max did, but when he did come in eventually, it was a nasty 4.3 second pit stop. And you've got to wonder, he only came out 2 seconds behind Max. If Red Bull had nailed that pit stop, delivered like a 1.9 like they used to do, when the rims were smaller and the wheels were lighter, so it was easier to do quick ones. You got to wonder, Checo might have come out ahead of Max, and I reckon if he'd have come out ahead of Max, unless there were team orders, which there probably would have been, I think he could have kept Max behind, but alas, it was a bad pit stop. He came out behind Max, but crucially, he came out ahead of Lewis as well. Because then tyre gate began. Lance Stroll had an explosive rear end puncture down the main straight, scary shunt. Safety car came out, race restarted, Max P1, Checo P2. He was just about able to hold off Lewis Hamilton in that first lap again. Crucial that he kept him behind, because 10 laps later, with them three kind of running in procession pretty much, Max would have his own tyre blowout. Robbed the victory at the very last minute, but Sergio was there in P2 to inherit the lead. The red flag came out, race stopped. We would get a stationary restart for a 1 lap sprint at the very end. I remember that like it was yesterday. I was so excited. 1 lap sprint should happen more often. I don't know how, but it was fun. Perez on pole, Hamilton in P2 with his brakes smoking like F1 was in the 80s. That's a tobacco sponsorship joke. Anyway, Lewis did get the jump on Checo. It looked like Sergio had blown his chance. But then Mark Webber's testicles returned into his body. Brake magic was anything but magic for Lewis Hamilton, and he fell well outside of the points, and Checo took the win. He's second in F1, he's first in a Red Bull, doing the job that Red Bull wanted their second driver to do, to pick up the pieces when Max can't deliver. I still can't get over how many Hamilton fans wouldn't accept that Lewis made a mistake. It was his input, accidental touch of that brake magic button that caused him to lock up and lose that win. Don't worry, I know some of you Verstappen fans are just as guilty of it, where Max can do no wrong, but you know, these drivers are human beings. Lewis made an error. It's okay. Nobody's perfect. Trust me, I'm an Albon fan. I know this. And also, Perez, Vettel at Aston Martin, Gasly at AlphaTauri podium. That was immaculate vibes. I'd love to see that again. Congratulations, well done Sergio Perez for winning the 2022 Azerbaijan Grand Prix. Or, unlucky Sergio, mate, I thought you had it, but, you know, Albon slipstream at the end, he just got you on the line. You're going to have to settle for P2. Come on, Alex Albon. Okay, that's obviously not going to happen, is it? Look, who knows what's going to happen? I don't, you don't, but I think Sergio has a fantastic opportunity. He knows this track well. He's driving fantastically at the minute. He's closer to Max now than he was this time last year. And I think this time last year, again, I think, you know, he gave a very, very good account of himself at Baku relative to Verstappen last year. So I'm excited to see if he can deliver the goods. Maybe out-qualify Max for the second weekend in a row. I just hopefully don't shunt it into the wall to, you know, red flag the session, Sergio. Although Baku is one of those tracks, wasn't it? Sonoda last year binned it, and then Sainz spun, avoiding him, didn't he, as well? I feel like we might see a red flag in Q3, which would be a kind of bit of a shame, to be honest. But anyway, hopefully this weekend's a Baku banger. I'll be doing my live stream tomorrow, my pre-race preview, so I'll see you there. My name's been Tommo. Like and subscribe. Thanks again. Have a good one. Ta-da.